Hello and welcome back to my channel. We are going to cover the absolutely false narrative that's being posted on Facebook and other places that Nancy Green was the first black woman millionaire, and that Aunt Jemima gave her that. They took her from a slave, and then they magically gave her this ability to be a millionaire, and she died wealthy and happy, and she was so happy to work for them. And the history of Aunt Jemima and how it's actually really, really racist and really, really gross. Alright, let's start off with the first incarnation of Aunt Jemima was not technically Nancy Green. It was this art thing piece here that I'm going to show you. That is here. We're going to show it here. So now you see that first incarnation. It is a drawing, a stereotype of what Aunt Jemima was a term for, which was the mammy stereotype, which was a black woman that was enslaved, and instead of raising her own children, she was forced to raise the master's children. She took care of the household, the cooking, all of those things. And I'm sure that in bigger households, there were more than one black woman that covered that. But Aunt Jemima is actually a term for a mammy, which within itself is extremely disgustingly racist. And to whitewash over that and to pretend like that's not what that was is a huge problem. Now, where Nancy Green comes into play is in 1889, they needed someone to play Aunt Jemima at the Columbia. Let me read that. Exposition held in Chicago. Who was Nancy Green? Nancy Green was born in Kentucky in 1834. I don't or cannot find a lot of info about certain times in her life. I know she had 4 kids, and I know she was married. But as many of you know, because we are a sucky country, we did not keep records, birth records, and marriage records for slaves. We didn't. So I know that she had 4 children. I know that she was married. I don't know anything more than that. I can't find a whole lot of information on that. If you actually have more information on that, please link it down below. I would love to read it, because I find the history that I don't know actually really fun to learn. But she was born as a slave. She was a house slave, a typical mammy house slave. When she was freed after the Civil War, she continued to work for the same family. They moved from Kentucky to Chicago. The family was friends with the people that owned Aunt Jemima at the time. And they convinced her to be the mammy, to portray this typical stereotype thing. And I mean, it was bad. They had her next to the world's largest barrel of flour and had her singing songs and telling tales about how slavery wasn't so bad, where they were already in 1889 trying to wash over how bad slavery was. And so they're trying to get her to play, they're trying to get her to tell these happy times of being a house slave and cooking for her white family. She did a really good job. So they wanted to give her a lifetime contract to be Aunt Jemima. But that is actually not what happened. Nancy Green did not complete that contract. Nancy Green did not want to go to Paris, so they hired another woman in her 60s to be Aunt Jemima, to go over to Paris. Nancy Green died at the age of 79, I believe. Let me double check my numbers there. 76. She died at the age of 76, still working for the same family that enslaved her in Chicago. She was not, nor was she ever, a millionaire. She was not properly paid for her services, and her entire service, what they wanted these women that played Aunt Jemima to portray, was a black woman who was a happy slave, who was treated well by the white man. It did not represent the actual history. At that point, they were already trying to cover up the atrocities of slavery. And one of the things that they used in that was the Aunt Jemima stereotype. So it absolutely needs to go. You absolutely should know that Nancy Green was not a millionaire. She died working for the same family, and you should stop believing everything you see on Facebook because you are completely and totally ignoring this woman's history. And I think she's very interesting. I am still reading up on her. I may do an update, but I wanted to get this out before people like completely and totally bought into that. So that is why Aunt Jemima needs to go. I will probably do an update with the later versions of Aunt Jemima and their stories, but I wanted to get Nancy Green's out first because that's the one everyone is talking about. All right, guys, I will see y'all later.